Tonight we are tracking a developing story that's already sending shockwaves through the monarchy and beyond. Just now, a prominent royal author has publicly called on King Charles to abdicate, declaring, quote, "It's time to step down." The demand didn't come quietly. It came in a sharply worded statement that questions leadership, legacy, and the future direction of the crown at a moment many describe as fragile and defining. This isn't palace gossip. This isn't tabloid noise. This is a direct challenge to the reigning monarch from a voice that has spent years documenting, analysing, and at times defending the institution itself. So what changed? What prompted such a dramatic public call? Is this about health concerns, public trust, internal royal tensions, or a deeper debate about whether the monarchy is prepared for the next generation? Tonight we break down exactly what was said, the historical weight of the word abdicate, and what it would actually mean if such a step were ever taken. Because in royal history, abdication is not just a headline, it's a turning point. The palace has not yet issued a formal response, but behind closed doors, conversations are almost certainly happening. And when a respected royal commentator says the time has come for a king to step aside, the ripple effects are immediate. This is more than a statement, it's a moment. And we're going to walk through it clearly, carefully, and without the noise. So you understand not just the demand, but the stakes. Just now, the statement that's igniting debate across the United Kingdom and beyond did not come wrapped in ambiguity. It came direct, deliberate, and unmistakably pointed at the highest level of the monarchy. A prominent royal author, long known for chronicling the inner workings of the House of Windsor, issued a public demand calling on King Charles to abdicate, declaring in clear terms that it is time to step down. The wording was not subtle. It was not framed as suggestion or gentle advice. According to the published statement, the author argued that the monarchy stands at a critical crossroads and that continued stability requires a transition of leadership that reflects the future, not the past. In perhaps the most striking line, the author wrote, "For the good of the institution and the country it serves, the king should consider immediate abdication." Those words, immediate abdication, were now at the centre of intense national discussion. The statement continued by referencing what the author described as mounting pressures surrounding the crown. Without detailing private conversations, the author pointed to public opinion trends, generational shifts, and what was called a rapidly evolving constitutional climate. There was a clear implication that the monarchy must adapt swiftly or risk long-term erosion of public trust. The author stressed that this was not a personal attack, but an institutional concern, writing that this is about preservation through transition, not criticism of character. What makes this declaration particularly powerful is the source. This is not an outspoken critic of the monarchy. This is someone who has spent decades studying royal history, writing biographies, and often defending the institution against harsher detractors. That history gives weight to the demand. When a long-time observer shifts tone from analysis to advocacy, it resonates differently. In the statement, the author also invoked history, specifically referencing the rare but seismic precedent of abdication within the British monarchy. While no direct comparisons were made, the language suggested that decisive moments sometimes require extraordinary choices. The author emphasised that abdication, while dramatic, is a constitutional mechanism, not a collapse. "The crown endures," the statement read, "but it endures best when it listens to the moment it inhabits." There was also mention of generational leadership. The author wrote that the monarchy must embrace the expectations of a new era and suggested that a younger figure may be better positioned to navigate modern challenges, media scrutiny, and shifting global dynamics. The statement stopped short of naming a successor explicitly, but the implication was unmistakable. The future must arrive sooner rather than later. Notably, the tone remained formal rather than emotional. There were no sensational accusations, no inflammatory language. Instead, the power of the statement lies in its restraint. The call to abdicate was framed as measured, rational, and rooted in concern for continuity. That framing is what makes the demand more consequential. The release of the statement has already triggered reaction from commentators, constitutional scholars, and royal watchers. Social media platforms saw immediate debate over whether such a call crosses a line or represents legitimate public discourse. Yet, regardless of opinion, the core of the matter remains unchanged. A respected royal author has publicly and unequivocally urged King Charles to step down, to step Tonight we break down exactly what was said, the historical weight of the word abdicate, and what it would actually mean if such a step were ever taken. Because in royal history, abdication is not just a headline, it's a turning point. The palace has not yet issued a formal response, but behind closed doors, conversations are almost certainly happening. And when a respected royal commentator says the time has come for a king to step aside, the ripple effects are immediate. This is more than a moment. And we're going to walk through it, and clearly, carefully, and without the noise. So you understand not just the demand, but the stakes. The question echoing across political circles, royal households, and media studios tonight is simple. Why now? Why would a seasoned royal author known for careful language and historical perspective choose this precise moment to publicly call for abdication? Timing in matters of monarchy is never accidental. Every statement, every appearance, every silence carries weight. And this demand arrives at a moment many describe as unusually delicate. The monarchy is currently navigating a period of visible transition. King Charles ascended to the throne after decades as heir apparent, carrying both experience and expectation. Yet his reign, though defined by continuity, has unfolded under intense scrutiny. Public opinion polls over recent months have shown fluctuating support for the institution, particularly among younger generations. Debates around relevance, cost, and constitutional role have resurfaced with renewed energy. While none of these conversations are new, their volume has grown louder. The author's statement references what is described as a critical crossroads, suggesting that broader societal shifts may have influenced the timing. The United Kingdom is experiencing political recalibration, economic strain, and generational change. In such periods, national institutions often face renewed evaluation. The monarchy, as both symbolic and constitutional entity, inevitably becomes part of that discussion. There is also the matter of health speculation. While no official crisis has been declared, public appearances have at times fueled commentary about stamina and long-term capacity. The author did not cite specific medical concerns, but alluded to the demands of modern monarchy in an age of relentless visibility. The role today extends far beyond ceremonial duties. It requires constant engagement, global travel, and real-time response to a 24-hour news cycle. The implication within the statement is that timing matters not only politically, but physically. Another factor may be internal royal dynamics. Over the past few years, the monarchy has faced public-family tensions, high-profile departures, and reputational challenges. While many of these issues have settled into quieter phases, their aftershocks remain. The author's language about stability through renewal hints at a belief that a generational shift could reset narratives and reduce lingering friction. Media transformation is also central to the timing. The monarchy now operates in an environment where every gesture is analysed instantly. Social platforms amplify both support and criticism at unprecedented speed. A single moment can dominate global conversation within minutes. The author's demand may reflect a view that adapting to this landscape requires leadership fully aligned with digital era expectations. There is historical symbolism as well. The memory of past abdications lingers in British consciousness. Though rare, such moments redefine eras. By invoking that mechanism now, the author appears to argue that proactive transition can prevent reactive crisis. In other words, choosing the moment may be preferable to being forced into one. Political neutrality adds another layer. The monarchy's constitutional role depends on remaining above partisan conflict. In times of polarized debate, maintaining that neutrality becomes increasingly complex. The author suggests that timing a leadership change strategically could insulate the institution from becoming entangled in broader national disputes. Ultimately, the demand did not emerge in isolation. It reflects a convergence of generational change, public debate, institutional pressure, and evolving expectations. Whether one agrees with the assessment or not, the timing itself has become part of the story. A calculated intervention at a moment when conversations about the monarchy's future are already intensifying. Tonight we break down exactly what was said, the historical weight of the word abdicate, and what it would actually mean if such a step were ever taken. Because in royal history, abdication is not just a headline, it's a turning point. The palace has not yet issued a formal response, but Behind closed doors, conversations are almost certainly happening. And when a respected royal commentator says the time has come for a king to step aside, the ripple effects are immediate. This is more than a statement, it's a moment. And we're going to walk through it clearly, carefully, and without the noise, so you understand not just the demand, but the stakes. At the centre of this escalating debate lies a deeper question. What is truly driving the call for abdication? Is this about health concerns, mounting institutional pressure, political climate, or a convergence of all three? The royal author's statement stops short of making direct accusations. But between the lines, several underlying factors begin to take shape. Health is the most immediate speculation whenever a reigning monarch faces calls to step aside. The modern monarchy demands endurance, public engagement, state visits, diplomatic audiences, ceremonial duties, and constant media exposure create a schedule that rivals that of elected leaders. While there has been no formal declaration of incapacity, observers have noted the visible strain that accompanies the role. The author referenced the physical realities of leadership in an era of unrelenting pace. Language that signals concern without stating specifics. In constitutional terms, abdication based on health would not be unprecedented globally, though it remains rare in British history. Beyond personal capacity, institutional pressure is equally significant. The monarchy today operates under sharper public evaluation than at any time in the past century. Transparency expectations have risen. Financial scrutiny is more detailed. Public funding debates resurface regularly. Younger demographics question inherited systems of authority more openly than previous generations. The author's remarks about preserving stability through transition suggest a belief that continued pressure could erode long-term legitimacy if not addressed decisively. Political climate also plays a subtle but powerful role. While the British monarch remains constitutionally neutral, the environment surrounding the crown is anything but static. The United Kingdom continues to navigate economic adjustments, regional political tensions, and global diplomatic recalibrations. In such periods, symbolic leadership carries amplified weight. The author's demand may reflect concern that the monarchy must project not only continuity, but also renewal to remain insulated from political crosscurrents. There is also the matter of generational optics. King Charles spent decades preparing for the throne, yet he assumed it later in life compared to many historical counterparts. The author's suggestion that the institution must reflect the era it serves implies a calculation about public perception. In an age driven by digital immediacy and youth engagement, optics influence relevance. A younger monarch in this line of reasoning may align more naturally with evolving cultural dynamics. Family turbulence over recent years cannot be ignored. Publicized internal divisions, high-profile interviews, and memoir revelations have placed the monarchy in defensive posture at various moments. Even when controversies subside, reputational impact lingers. The author may view a leadership transition as an opportunity to recalibrate the narrative and shift focus toward unity rather than discord. International dimension adds another layer. The British monarch remains head of state in multiple Commonwealth realms. Conversations about republicanism have intensified in some of those nations. A call for abdication framed as renewal could be interpreted as an attempt to strengthen global ties by demonstrating adaptability rather than rigidity. Finally, there is the institutional philosophy underlying the statement. The author appears to argue that abdication should not be equated with failure, and that instead, it's be positioned as strategic stewardship. It's a decision made in the interest of continuity rather than personal tenure. That framing shifts the conversation from individual capability to institutional longevity. Health, pressure, and politics intersect in complex ways. None exist independently. The call to step down seems rooted not in a single event, but in an accumulation of visible and invisible forces shaping the monarchy's present moment. Tonight we break down exactly what was said, the historical weight of the word abdicate, and what it would actually mean if such a step were ever taken. Because in royal history, abdication is not just a headline, it's a turning point. The palace has not yet issued a formal response, but Behind closed doors, conversations are almost certainly happening. And when a respected royal commentator says the time has come for a king to step aside, the ripple effects are immediate. This is more than a statement. It's a moment. And we're going to walk through it clearly, carefully, and without the noise. So you understand not just the demand, but the stakes. The word abdicate carries a gravity that few of the constitutional terms possess. It is not resignation, it is not retirement. Within the British monarchy, abdication represents a formal legal renunciation of the crown, an act that reshapes the line of succession instantly and permanently. When a reigning monarch abdicates, the transfer of sovereignty is immediate, governed not by ceremony alone, but by statute and constitutional convention. Historically, abdication in Britain is rare. The most prominent modern example remains King Edward VIII in 1936, whose decision to step down triggered a constitutional crisis that reverberated across the empire. That moment required parliamentary approval through His Majesty's Declaration of Abdication Act, demonstrating that abdication is not purely personal, it is a legal process intertwined with government authority. The crown may symbolize continuity, but its transfer is bound by legislation. If King Charles were to abdicate, the constitutional mechanism would activate swiftly. The heir apparent would ascend the throne at the moment of abdication. There would be no vacancy, no interim phase. The Accession Council would convene to formalise recognition, and proclamations would be issued across the United Kingdom and Commonwealth realms. Oaths would be taken, titles would shift, the machinery of state would continue uninterrupted, emphasising stability, even amid dramatic change. Yet, beyond procedure lies symbolism. Abdication signals a conscious interruption of expected tenure. Unlike succession by death, which follows natural order, abdication introduces deliberate choice. That choice reshapes public narrative. It can be interpreted as sacrifice, strategy, or instability, depending on context. The royal author's argument frames abdication as proactive stewardship rather than forced retreat, attempting to redefine its meaning in contemporary terms. There are also implications for the Church of England, where the monarch serves as supreme governor. A transition would require ecclesiastical acknowledgement alongside civil recognition. The coronation ceremony, though often months later, would formalise spiritual and constitutional roles. The intertwining of church, state and monarchy adds layers of ritual and legal continuity that extend beyond political mechanics. Commonwealth nations present another dimension. Several realms recognise the British monarch as head of state. Any abdication would automatically elevate the successor within those countries unless constitutional changes were pursued independently. This interconnected structure means that a single decision in London carries legal and symbolic effects thousands of miles away. Public perception would shape the broader consequence. Markets, diplomatic partners and political institutions closely observe signals of stability. While the monarchy does not govern policy, it anchors tradition. An abdication framed as orderly renewal could reinforce adaptability. Conversely, one perceived as crisis-driven could invite uncertainty. The narrative surrounding the act becomes as influential as the act itself. There is also the personal dimension. A monarch who abdicates retains royal status but relinquishes sovereign authority. Titles may be adjusted. Public duties would shift. The historical memory of that decision would attach permanently to the individual's legacy. Edward VIII's abdication defined his historical identity. Any modern parallel would carry similar imprint. Ultimately, abdication is both legal instrument and symbolic watershed. It demonstrates that even the most enduring institution contains mechanisms for change. Whether invoked out of necessity or strategy, it marks a turning point, not merely in leadership, but in how the monarchy interprets its relationship with the era it inhabits. Tonight we break down exactly what was said, the historical weight of the word abdicate, and what it would actually mean if such a step were ever taken. Because in royal history, abdication is not just a headline, it's a turning point. The palace has not yet issued a formal response, but behind closed doors, Conversations are almost certainly happening, and when a respected royal commentator says the time has come for a king to step aside, the ripple effects are immediate. This is more than a statement, it's a moment, and we're going to walk through it clearly, carefully, and without the noise, so you understand not just the demand, but the stakes. As the call for abdication circulates across headlines and dominates broadcast panels, one element stands out just as prominently as the demand itself, the silence from Buckingham Palace. No immediate press release, no formal denial, no carefully worded reaffirmation of commitment. In the world of monarchy, silence is not absence, it is strategy. Royal communications operate on deliberate timing. Statements are rarely reactive unless circumstances demand urgency. The palace traditionally avoids responding directly to commentary from authors, analysts, or media figures. Engaging publicly with such demands risks elevating them. By withholding comment, the institution preserves a posture of stability and continuity, signaling that constitutional authority does not fluctuate with opinion. Yet silence also invites interpretation. In an era of instant response culture, where public figures often address controversy within minutes, restraint can be perceived in multiple ways. Supporters of the monarch may interpret it as dignified composure. Critics may frame it as avoidance. The absence of words becomes a canvas onto which narratives are projected. Historically, the palace has maintained a principle often summarized as never complain, never explain. While that phrase is more cultural than official doctrine, it reflects a communications philosophy rooted in endurance. The monarchy's longevity has depended in part on rising above public dispute rather than entering it. By declining to comment on calls for abdication, the palace reinforces the idea that succession and tenure are governed by constitutional order, not media cycles. There are practical considerations as well. Any formal acknowledgement of abdication discourse could trigger constitutional speculation. Financial markets monitor stability signals. Commonwealth governments observe institutional continuity. Even a brief statement can carry diplomatic ripple effects. Silence avoids inadvertently amplifying uncertainty. At the same time, internal conversations almost certainly unfold behind closed doors. Senior advisors, constitutional experts, and communications strategists would assess potential scenarios. The monarchy's apparatus is designed to anticipate developments long before they materialize publicly. Contingency planning exists not because abdication is imminent, but because institutional continuity requires preparation for all possibilities. Public engagements also serve as indirect communication. When the monarch continues scheduled appearances, audiences, and ceremonial duties without interruption, it projects steadiness. Visibility becomes response. Each handshake, speech, and ribbon cutting conveys continuity without explicit rebuttal. Media outlets, however, operate in a different rhythm. Analysts dissect the absence of comment, inviting former palace officials and constitutional scholars to interpret its meaning. Social platforms amplify speculation, filling informational gaps with theory. In this environment, silence competes with commentary and restraint competes with reaction. There is also precedent for delayed clarification. In past controversies, the palace has sometimes waited days before issuing measured statements. Such communications typically reaffirm dedication to duty rather than engage with specific criticisms. The language emphasizes service, continuity, and constitutional role. Ultimately, palace silence functions as both shield and signal. It protects the institution from reactive escalation while reinforcing the principle that monarchy operates beyond the volatility of public demand. Whether that silence persists or evolves into a formal statement remains to be seen. But for now, the absence of response stands as a deliberate posture within a rapidly intensifying debate. Tonight we break down exactly what was said, the historical weight of the word abdicate, and what it would actually mean if such a step were ever taken. Because in royal history, abdication is not just a headline, it's a turning point. The palace has not yet issued a formal response, but behind closed doors, conversations are almost certainly happening. And when a respected royal commentator says the time has come for a king to step aside, the ripple effects are immediate. This is more than a statement, it's of a moment. And we're going to walk through it clearly, carefully, and without the noise. So you understand not just the demand, but the stakes. With a public call for abdication now, part of the national conversation, attention shifts to what comes next. While no constitutional trigger has been pulled, the mere introduction of such a demand opens opens multiple pathways: political, institutional, and symbolic. The monarchy is structured for continuity, yet it must also adapt to unfolding realities. One possible scenario is straightforward continuity. The palace maintains silence, the monarch continues public duties, and the news cycle gradually shifts. In this outcome, the call for abdication becomes a moment of debate rather than a catalyst for change. Public engagement, state functions, and diplomatic appearances reinforce normalcy. Over time, the institution absorbs the criticism without altering its course. Another scenario involves strategic recalibration without abdication. This could include a redistribution of responsibilities within the royal household. Senior working royals might assume expanded visibility, representing the crown at high-profile events, while the monarch focuses on constitutional essentials. Such an approach would signal adaptation without invoking the gravity of abdication. It would also align with modern precedents in other European monarchies, where aging sovereigns gradually delegate duties while retaining title. A more dramatic possibility remains formal abdication. Should that path be chosen, constitutional procedures would move swiftly. The heir apparent would ascend immediately and proclamations would formalize succession. Preparations for coronation would begin, even if months away. Government coordination would ensure seamless transition across departments and Commonwealth realms. Markets and diplomatic partners would be briefed to reinforce stability. The narrative surrounding such a decision would be carefully crafted to emphasize continuity rather than rupture. There is also the potential for public dialogue to intensify rather than fade. Parliamentary voices could weigh in, though constitutionally, the decision to abdicate rests with the monarch. Editorial boards may amplify debate. Polling organizations might measure shifts in public sentiment. In this environment, perception becomes as influential as procedure. Commonwealth implications would factor heavily into any forward movement. Several member nations are already evaluating their constitutional relationships with the Crown. A transition at the top could either strengthen ties through renewal or accelerate Republican conversations, depending on how it is framed and received. Diplomatic messaging would therefore extend beyond the United Kingdom. Internally, the royal household would focus on cohesion. Public unity among senior members of the family would be essential to project stability. Joint appearances, coordinated messaging, and consistent symbolism would aim to prevent fragmentation narratives. The monarchy's resilience has historically depended on disciplined presentation during uncertainty. Another subtle but significant factor involves generational engagement. A shift in leadership, whether immediate or gradual, would likely emphasize modernization. Digital outreach, youth initiatives, and global partnerships could be elevated to reinforce relevance. Even absent abdication, the institution may accelerate visible reforms to address the concerns underlying the author's demand. Ultimately, the monarchy's design prioritizes endurance. It has weathered wars, crises, and cultural transformation over centuries. What happens next depends not only on constitutional mechanisms, but on judgment, the balance between tradition and adaptation, symbolism and practicality, continuity and change. The path forward will be shaped as much by perception as by statute, unfolding in real time under public scrutiny. Tonight we break down exactly what was said, the historical weight of the word abdicate, and what it would actually mean if such a step were ever taken. Because in royal history, abdication is not just a headline, it's a turning point. The palace has not yet issued a formal response, but behind closed doors, conversations are almost certainly happening. And when a respected royal commentator says the time has come for a king to step aside, the ripple effects are immediate. This is more than a statement. It's a moment. And we're going to walk through it clearly, carefully, and without the noise. So you understand not just the demand, but the stakes.